All right, we're going to go ahead and start with our first topic of the economy. We had a coin toss before they came up on the stage. So Marie, you will be opening our first question of the night. Inflation is a #1 priority for many voters. What do you think is the federal government's role in inflation, both in regard to causing and in regard to curbing? All right.
Well, thank you so much to our hosts.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our hosts. Thank you to our organizers. My name is Marie Gluesenkamp Pérez. I live in rural Skamania County in a house my wonderful husband and I built nail by nail. I am also mom to probably the world's cutest 13-month-old. And my opponent has spent the last 2 years preparing for tonight, practicing on TV. I've spent the last 2 years running a small business, and I think that's the experience that's really missing from Congress today. You know, Joe Kent has no interest in doing anything in our district. His agenda is to purge Republicans from the party. That's not my characterization of what he said. That is literally what he's said. Shut down the government. And it's not just about ideology. It's about very specific and very bad plans for our government. As a small business owner, I don't have the luxury of being in fights all day because I've got to worry about making payroll and paying my taxes. Kent couldn't care less about making payroll. How many jobs have you created, Joe? No one cares about how many Twitter followers you have if you're not living in the same reality as all of us. You know, there is something fundamentally wrong with our economy if I have to manufacture the car parts I need to fix cars. I'm having trouble with the cost of healthcare, the cost of childcare for my son and my employees, the cost of over-government regulation, the difficulty of getting small business loans. All 5 of those things we can address in the near term.
Mr. Kent.
Thank you guys for having me. Thanks to our audience for being here and to our hosts. I can barely see that. Okay. So the question was the economy. So right now our economy is absolutely being destroyed by Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and the Democrats at every level. You are going to have 1 month of wages stolen from you thanks to the inflation that has been driven by Biden's economic and especially his energy policies. On day 1, Biden killed off our energy economy. We are energy independent just 2 years ago, and that is driving inflation at every single level. If you work in the economy, it's hard for you to fill up your tank. The price of groceries is absolutely skyrocketing. So first and foremost, what can we do to fix that? We can turn back on U.S. energy, go back to issuing exploratory permits, turn back on Keystone XL, get our energy economy humming once more. Absolutely out of control government spending like we're seeing right now. There's a continuing resolution that is not addressing our unsecure southern border, not addressing inflation. It's getting ready to send $12 billion more dollars over to Ukraine while we can't produce enough baby formula to feed our own children. We've had the Democrats absolutely decimate our economy here in Washington State. Many of these same Democrats from Jay Inslee on down support my opponent, and they locked down our economy. They had government step in and use this emergency of COVID to take away our ability to run our businesses. That has had a catastrophic effect on our economy. The largest transfer of wealth from major global corporations, from small businesses to major global corporations happened because of the government. The small businesses, they were told they couldn't run, and the global corporations kept running day after day because they worked for the paymasters, they worked for the Democrat Party. So we can get back to being energy independent. We also need to aggressively onshore, bring back our manufacturing, revitalize our timber industry here in the Pacific Northwest, our fishing industry. I can kind of see that. Our fishing industry here, we just had our fishing industry shut down by excessive government regulation 2 days before Labor Day, costing the district
That's your
millions
time.
of dollars.
Rebuttal to Pérez.
You know, inflation is killing small businesses. Let me give you one example. The same box of gloves that used to cost me $5, the same gloves that I use on every car I touch, it costs me $25 a box today. And you multiply that out across the thousands of consumables I use every week running my auto shop, and you'll see this is a really tough economy. And we can't let senior citizens and people on fixed income bear that burden. You know, and Joe Kent wants to privatize Social Security. He wants to increase the age of retirement. We are not going to increase the age of retirement, Joe. Just because white-collar workers are living longer doesn't mean that people who work in the trade should pay for it by waiting longer to retire. The solutions he's offering are not going to address inflation.
Mr. Kent?
So I think since COVID mandates absolutely decimated small businesses, and you've been endorsed by many of the Democrats who pursued these policies, Marie, I think the people tonight deserve to know if you would continue Jay Inslee's COVID lockdown and his vax mandates that have absolutely decimated our economy. So I'll tell you what, Social Security entitlement spending, we have to secure Social Security. I'm not taking anyone's Social Security or Medicare. It's a tired old talking point. We need fiscal responsibility so that we're not saddling our future generations with trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. That's what we have to do, is have fiscal responsibility, open our economy up and not lock it down. Don't let the federal government decide when your business gets to open. So Marie, are you going to be honest with the people tonight and let them know if you're going to continue Jay Inslee's vaccine mandates and if you will wield authority and just shut down our economy?
Question number 2. Mortgage terms and housing costs are a growing concern in this district as well as nationally. What do you see as the major issue with our current housing situation, and how do you propose to solve those problems in Congress? Mr. Kent?
Yeah, so housing, again, the price is being driven up by this inflation cycle. So number one, you have to deal with energy. That's the answer to the vast majority of starting to solve our economic problems. But right now, we have a major problem where major global corporations and hedge funds like BlackRock are being allowed to purchase up massive amounts of housing using our pension fund, using our money. We need to stop their ability to buy up massive amounts of housing. This goes for BlackRock, Blackstone, Vanguard, City Street, all these major Democrat donors, because they're using our pension funds to do this. Now, we had an opportunity this last Congress to stop the carried interest loophole that these major global hedge funds benefit from, but the Democrats bailed on it. So don't let the Democrats tell you that they're going to go and fight Wall Street. They're with Wall Street, lock, stock, and barrel. So we have to enter an era of trust busting, prevent them from doing that. We also have to onshore raw materials. Right here in the Pacific Northwest, timber country, our timber industry was killed off at the altar of environmentalism. And now as a result, we gutted our ability to produce our own lumber. We took away jobs from people in the economy. We shipped them overseas, and now as a result, our forests burn every single summer because of a lack of management. So we need to open up our natural resources, onshore our manufacturing, and stop the Democrat-backed Wall Street, BlackRock, from destroying the ability for young people to get into the housing market right now.
You know, as the first candidate nominated who does not live in Clark County, I live in rural Skamania County, where 80% of employed people have to work outside of the county because there are no jobs. It is frustrating to me to be lectured about timber. You know, 5 generations of my family worked in timber. I know how much that hurt, because it hurt my cousins, it hurt us. And the reality is, you know, when we look at housing issues, we have to look at them from a supply and a demand issue. There's multiple things going on here. One of the serious problems is that we are not supporting career and technical education anymore. We have told generation of kids that what they're good at is not good enough, and that is so toxic. This idea that everybody's got to go to college and get a 4-year degree. You know, I don't know how many of you hired a computer programmer this month, but I'm willing to bet that you are on a wait list for a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter, the people that actually make things and build things and fix things. And I am so proud to work in the trades and ensure in Congress that we are fighting to return the prestige of these career and technical education programs, that we're supporting kids in what they're naturally gifted at, and that we're growing our ability to resolve our housing crisis here with the talents we already have.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Well, I'm proud of you that you work in the trades. That's great. But that's not going to create the ability for us to fix the systemic issues with the economy. Our energy sector's been absolutely decimated. We shipped our manufacturing base overseas. So while it's important to train a new generation of workers, what we have to do is get our ability to produce things back here domestically once again. The Democrats and a lot of the Republicans who I beat, they are the ones that wanted to ship our jobs overseas. The mill in Camas that used to employ about 2,000 people now only employs about 150. Those jobs were shipped overseas to China, and our timber industry suffers as a result, driving the cost of all these goods up. But the real jackals, the real reason this is happening is on Wall Street. It's BlackRock, it's Blackstone, it's these major global corporations, and they're doing it with our money. They're doing it with our pension funds. And so we are going to have to use the tools of the federal government to start to break up those trusts to get more fairness in the market.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
It is not just homeowners that are suffering. It is not just people in my generation who can't get their foot in the door of the housing market. You know, it's also small businesses like mine. I happen to actually have a degree in economics, and it took me a year to apply for a loan from the Small Business Administration to buy our building. And that's a loan I was qualified for. So it's like, read the room. I mean, how many people have a year to spend applying for a loan? And that whole year, I was looking around, the other auto shops that were coming up for sale, they were getting turned into coffee shops. They were getting turned into tattoo parlors. And rural communities are hemorrhaging the critical services they need to keep our economies vibrant. So this is putting us in a terrible position. And we've got to address it. We've got to ensure that the dollars are going to who really deserves it, small business owners, not just people who have the capacity to wade through waist-high applications.
Okay. Next question. Outside of the inflation and housing issues already discussed, what is your top economic priority to bring to Congress? Ms. Perez.
You know, energy independence has got to be a top priority. Like, you do not need a degree in economics to read the big green letters at the gas station. And so it's important for us to pursue this not only from an economic standpoint, but also from a standpoint of geopolitical security. You know, we deserve to make our decisions geopolitically with a degree of independence that only comes when we have national energy independence. But the great news here is that Washington State is already excellent. We're already leaders in developing renewable energy. I am pro-renewables because I am pro-business. Cheap energy is a boon to businesses everywhere. Drilling will be a part of our energy, but I also want the jobs of the future. I want to position us so that 50 years down the road, we're leading the industry. I actually believe that transitioning away from petroleum will be much slower than most people seem to hope it will be. I want a realistic policy. I don't want the middle class to have to decide if they're going to scrape together money for a Tesla or ride the bus. We need an equitable policy because, you know, the nearest charging station to my house is like 20 miles away. I also happen to believe that we need to be pursuing a policy of support for plug-in vehicles, plug-in hybrid, not all electric, because we're getting all of our battery minerals from China, and spoiler, they are not a great trading partner for us right now. I can get 8 hybrid vehicles for every 1 all-electric. That's the battery ratio. And so if what we're really pursuing is reducing the carbon export of our transportation, we should be having sensible policies based in reality and physics. But, you know, we can't deny.
It's time. Mr. Kent.
So to your original question, the economy, the number one issue that we have everything we need here. Over-regulation. The environmental industry, it's ironic to hear a Democrat, a rural Democrat, talk about how we need to get back to supporting these rural communities when Democrat policies and the green agenda have a west, but throughout the country. We need less government regulation. We need to revitalize our timber industries, get the federal government out of timber, get them out of fishing so that those resources support the communities right there. Another massive issue that we have, because you're always going to hear Democrats come in and talk about how they want to bring back manufacturing and whatnot too, but what they will never address is immigration. Immigration, legal and illegal immigration, is an assault on American workers. The first people displaced from low-skilled manual labor jobs, that is legal first-generation Americans, will be displaced. Our blue-collar workers will be displaced immediately by illegal immigration. This is why you never hear any Democrat or anybody on Wall Street talk about immigration at all. They want open borders. They want unlimited access to cheap labor. You'll hear this in the tech field as well. They don't want to pay American kids to learn STEM and then have to pay them. They want to import an endless wave of H-1B visas that displace U.S. labor. So it's very simple. Onshore, buy American, hire American, deregulate.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
So my husband and I actually had to buy a machine shop out in 2020 because they were retiring and they couldn't find an apprentice to take over. This was a shop that we had relied on for years to remanufacture our customers' parts. If I have to literally buy out a machine shop to ensure my customers have good quality parts, there is a serious problem in our economy. There is a serious problem when we can't find apprentice machinists. And this policy goes back to supporting career and technical education, but it also goes back to reshoring manufacturing and ensure that we have a market share, that we're able to keep up the caliber of parts that we have here, that we are investing in the trades, and we're ensuring that we have some control over market pricing.
Mr. Kemp.
Well, MAGA Murray wants to bring back the manufacturing, so I would agree with that. We need to bring back the manufacturing, but the devil is always in the details. Who's the first person that talked about bringing back American manufacturing? We know who that was. That was the America First movement. That was President Trump. We need to bring back our manufacturing, but when we do so, we need to ensure that it's not undercut by competition. Now they know that bringing back the manufacturing is essential. They tried this with the CHIPS Act. They're going to say, hey, we do need to bring back this manufacturing, but then they're never, ever going to tighten up the labor market in favor of American workers. Exact same thing with the green industry. They're going to continue to talk about how transition to green is the #1 priority. Tonight, Marie, I think you should answer, would you support Build Back Better or the Green New Deal? These policies have absolutely decimated our energy economy, and it's still a driving force with the Democrats in almost every single piece of legislation they put forward. We know you said you'd support the so-called Inflation Reduction
That
Act.
is time. We're on to the next question. Many economic issues are addressed in the process of budget reconciliation, where budget measures are voted on in large omnibus packages that contain a wide array of issues. Given that you can only vote yes or no on the entire package, what criteria would you be looking at to weigh the impact of all of these varying policies to determine your vote? Mr. Kent.
I don't like omnibus bills. So unless I can read the entire bill, it's a real simple no. We have to stop doing business where we submit a bill that is 3,000 pages long, 300 pages long, a couple hours before Congress is supposed to vote on it. That's just horrible government. That's gotten us to drive off the financial cliff that we're on right now. We need to slow down government, be diligent about it. We need to be able to come back to the district, or at least get on a phone call with everybody in the district and say, hey, here's what the bill is, here's what it does, and here's how much it costs. We need fiscal responsibility. The problem is the go along to get along establishment, the uniparty, Republicans and Democrats, they love these massive bills because everybody gets to scratch everybody's back. The lobbyists come through, the Appropriations Committee puts in a little bit of pork for everybody's district, and then next thing you know, we're sending $65 billion off to Ukraine, and we can't even secure our own southern border. We can't get our babies enough infant baby formula. So we need to slow down the cogs of government and be diligent about every single penny we spend, because we are in a major hurt right now as far as our finances and our economy goes. We cannot continue to spend at a massive deficit and let lobbyists and corporate government dictate the trillions of dollars that we spend. So I am a firm no on omnibus spending.
I just want everyone to acknowledge that Joe Kent said he's not going to bring home federal dollars. That he wants our tax dollars that we pay the federal government to go out to other states like California and fix their problems, right? This is not a sensible policy. And the reality is that small business owners like us are suffering because we have let our infrastructure decline and suffer. We've got a 95-year-old bridge. Let me tell you, when I've got the baby in the car, I make sure I drive across the 205, not the I-5, because I don't have a whole lot of confidence, right? As a small business owner, I don't look at a 95-year-old roof and think, oh my God, what an asset. Hope it doesn't take a lift out when it falls. No, you invest in your infrastructure. It's got to be an asset. It's got to be serving the engines of our economy, which is small businesses. And I know, DC, I will fight tooth and nail to bring our federal tax dollars back to our district to ensure that our projects are built with labor from Southwest Washington with American-made steel. That's my commitment.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kemp.
Yeah, with all this out of control government spending, I mean, Marie already said that she would sign off on the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which would add 87,000 more IRS agents to go through and audit Americans making under $100,000 and put new and additional taxes on American energy. So that's what's coming. Marie will vote in lockstep with whoever the Democrat Speaker of the House is. I'm going to D.C. to provide a strong check and balance against what Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi have done to this economy. We have to start having much more financial responsibility. What she just said right now about her number one goal being to get pork to come back to the district, that's what's gotten us in this financial state of ruin right now. That right there is music to lobbyists' ears. They will get her to sign off on anything as long as it's just got a couple projects for this district and that's going to do a little bit of good here that she can use to get elected the next time. We have to do what's good for the district. We have to bring back our manufacturing, revitalize our natural resources, everything we talked about, but we have to be fiscally responsible.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
Joe Kent will not bring your tax dollars home. He will not support the projects that our economy relies on. He is there to be a figure of opposition and division, and I'm there to fix shit and build things. This is a very clear difference, and he is saying it over and over and over with a lot of words, but I appreciate the clarity because this is not the path to get our economy back on track and support small businesses like ours.
Next question. We are moving on to healthcare. I would like to remind the crowd that they do need to not be participants. We are observers only. Our first question on healthcare is, with the full benefit of almost 3 years of hindsight, what would you change about the U.S. response to the COVID pandemic, and would you work in Congress to take any specific actions to ensure any mistakes are not repeated in the future? Ms. Perez?
Yeah, I would like to just pause for a minute and acknowledge that 1 million Americans lost their lives during COVID, and that 3,000 medical providers died, either when vaccines weren't available. They kept showing up to work and they kept dying, and they deserve our respect. I'm grateful that I do not see a mask mandate coming back because we've got to follow the science on this, and the science says we have a vaccine. That's just the reality. The past 2 years have been hell for so many of us. Essential workers, you cannot fix cars over Zoom. I'm here to tell you. But for so many medical providers, those early months were a grinding nightmare. And we have so much ground to make up in our economy. And we're not going to do it by arresting Fauci for murder, like Joe Kent proposes. Rehashing these grievance policies, bringing up this clickbait politics, this is not going to fix things, folks. This is going to make it worse. And we have an obligation to the future generations to continue to move forward. So that's what I'm here running for.
Mr. Kent?
So first off, we have to learn from the past of COVID. We can never allow our economy to be locked down again by the dictates of our leaders who are acting like tyrants. So never again to government-mandated lockdowns. Never again to government-mandated vaccines. That can never happen. We need to bring back everybody who lost their job because of a vaccine mandate, bring them back with full back pay. I will not sign off on the National Defense Authorization Act until we bring back the service members that were kicked out for refusing to take the experimental gene therapy vaccine. We also must have accountability. Look, when government screws something up, we have to have accountability. The bottom line with Anthony Fauci and a lot of his underlings, they were running amok as unelected bureaucrats funding gain-of-function research under the nose of our federal government. They were funding the very same people who cooked up the COVID-19 virus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And Fauci must be held accountable for that. At the beginning, we said a million people died. Lots of people died because of COVID. Had we known the initial gene sequence of the COVID-19 virus, had Fauci been honest and upfront and said, hey boss, we funded this, we could have demanded to the Chinese Communist Party they release the gene sequence. That would have got us much further along with having an actual vaccine and an actual solution. Having tight immigration and the ability to shut down travel from places where diseases are running rampant, absolutely essential. So no more excessive government control, and we will hold unelected bureaucrats accountable.
To the crowd, you are allowed. If people continue to applaud, you will be asked to leave. It is disrespectful to the candidates and their time. We will resume. Ms. Pérez.
Does anyone else feel like they just spent a month on YouTube? and that's what we're signing up for with Joe. You know, he thinks he can raise a lot of money saying stuff like this. And maybe he is. But it is doing nothing to heal our country. Nothing to get us back on the same page of what we need to do to support our businesses and support our schools. I mean, let me tell you, I get my internet from a radio tower. I mean, thank God I didn't have a kid trying to go to school during COVID. It has been tough. It has been tough. And that bears repeating. But talking about these grievance policies, this is not policy. Friends, this is not how we move forward. This is how you fundraise on Tucker Carlson.
Mr. Kent.
So this is the story of my life. I served for this country for over 20 years, did 11 combat deployments, lost many friends, lost my late wife because our ruling class, Republicans and Democrats, consistently lied to the American people to keep us engaged in wars abroad. That is why I have a skepticism of our federal government. This is why I am passionate about holding unelected bureaucrats who think they have more power than the American people. This is why I'm passionate about holding them responsible and accountable. Because if we don't begin to restore the trust of our institutions, if we continue to let people like Fauci, Jim Mattis, the list goes on, these unelected bureaucrats run roughshod because they have more respect for their institutions than they do the Constitution, we will lose our very republic. Look, I had no desire to have any kind of distrust in the government when I first started serving. However, this has been the struggle of my life, is to see the fact that we have been lied to at every level. And if we don't start restoring trust, we're going to lose our republic.
Mr. Kent, that is time. We will move to the next question. Do you support vaccine requirements for employment? Why or why not? Mr. Kent.
No, I do not. It's an absolute infringement on your individual rights, and specifically when we're talking about a vaccine that's not a vaccine. The COVID-19 vaccine is an experimental gene therapy. So we do not need to have anybody have that mandated to them as a condition of entry or as a condition of their employment. We also need the federal government to release the VAERS, the vaccine reaction database that they're suppressing right now. We need that released so we know what all the actual side effects are of the vaccine before we continue to give it out to a massive population.
Ms. Pérez.
You know, if you are asking me if I support the right of private individual business owners to set the terms of their employment, yes, I do. That is the right of private employers. You know, but people have forgotten how bad it is to be really, really sick. You know, I have members of my family who are vaccine hesitant. I got sick as a kid. It was tough. Let me tell you, I spent a summer on the couch. You know, and that's the reality of what it looks like to live in a world without vaccines. And I am so grateful for all of the Americans who signed up for trials and supported. That's an act of patriotism I hope those people are always proud of.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Yeah, we can't take away people's individual liberties by forcing them to take a vaccine, period, end of story. I mean, that's what's at stake here, is our liberties and the government's ability to continue to take away our ability to keep our businesses open, to go to church, to go to school. We have to learn from the past of COVID. These vaccine mandates have had a catastrophic effect. We have wildfires right now, and there's not enough forest firefighters that are available to go up and actually fight fire, because although wildland firefighters can be hired without having the vaccine, the second they get activated, they become state employees, and the vaccine mandate still applies to them. So this has hurt our emergency services. This has hurt our economy. We have to learn from past mistakes, hold people accountable, and never go back to those dark days again.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
You know, we have spent so much time talking about the past, talking about the past couple of years. But one thing that I want to make sure that we touch on in this debate is what's happening this summer, what's happening going forward, which is our fundamental right to bodily autonomy and self-determination being taken away. Joe Kent supports a national ban on abortion without an exception for rape, incest, the life of the mother, despite the fact that people in Washington state have been very, very clear that we support the right of women to choose. That doesn't matter to Joe Kent. He has said he is going to override the will of the states and impose federal policy on us. And women will die because of it. It is not your place, Joe, to tell women to carry a baby to term. It is a slap in the face. You are not in charge of our choices.
Next question. It is widely agreed that COVID has revealed problems in our existing healthcare issue. Outside of the issue of COVID, what would be your top priority to address in our current healthcare system? Ms. Perez.
Everybody knows that healthcare is way too expensive. The costs for healthcare are out of control. And nobody knows that better than small business owners or rural Americans like me, right? It has been a tough choice for so many small business owners. Most small business owners I know, like me, actually don't have health insurance. We've had to make the tough choice of deciding whether we're going to sleep at night knowing that if something happened to me or my husband, we could afford to cover the cost without selling our house, or giving up the business that we have poured everything into. Every family deserves access to healthcare when and where they need it. And right now, the system is not delivering. What it's delivering is extraordinary wealth for big pharma and insurance companies, while we are getting sicker and sicker. We have got to lower costs and increase access. And you know, we've also got to be addressing burnout in our medical professionals who are leaving in droves. You know, let's be really, really clear about the choice between Joe Kent and I. He wants to privatize our Medicare and Medicaid. He wants to put Social Security on the stock market and gamble away our future. We're not going to let that happen.
Mr. Kent?
So the problem with healthcare right now is there's not enough choice. We need to give people more choice, the right to go and choose their own healthcare provider, whether that's across the border in Oregon or wherever works for them. We need to not tie your health insurance directly to your employer. Individuals should be able to write off their healthcare expenses as a tax deduction. Right now, only businesses can do that. Pharmaceuticals are out of control. Big Pharma's price gouging. Joe Biden is the one that reversed the insulin costs, and now insulin prices are skyrocketing. We need more competition with pharma. We need to deregulate the amount of control the FDA has over drugs. If drugs are tested somewhere in Europe or another first world country, they should immediately be able to be reproduced as generics and introduced to the market here. That's why everybody goes up to Canada to buy their drugs. So really what we need is just simply more choice. Now, Marie, the way that she defines healthcare is abortion, state-funded abortion up to the 9th month of pregnancy. And look, I know abortion is a controversial issue. I'm pro-life, but there is nothing more controversial than the current Democrat and Marie's plan to have state-funded, government-funded abortion up until the 9th month of pregnancy. That is a position that is too controversial for many pro-choice individuals. She also defines healthcare as providing government-funded gender-altering mutilation surgeries and chemical castration for minors. They call it gender-affirming care, but it's an absolutely predatory practice. I don't want the government funding any of this. I want to protect our children. Absolutely essential. So we need choice, and we need to protect our children from this ideology that says that they can have sex changes via under the surgeon's knife or via big pharma.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
Seniors will die with Joe Kent's health care plan. People will be selling their homes. You know, literally, only someone who has never shopped for health insurance for their employees would think that that's a fun thing and a great idea to go forward with. You know, the ACA was passed in 2009, and it needs a tune-up. I just happen to be in the business of tuning things up. If somebody comes in and their car needs brakes, I don't tell them to torch it, we fix it. And that's what we've got to do.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
So do you guys remember the last time the Democrats talked about having government-driven health care? If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Obamacare, ACH, was an absolute disaster. The individual mandate was found to be unconstitutional. I don't want to trust the Democrats, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, with health care anymore. That's why I'm going to D.C. to provide a check and a balance against them. We need more choice. We need more actual implementation of the free market so the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies are competing for our dollars, not dictating from on high, from the federal government, all the Democrat friends on Wall Street and Big Pharma, not dictating how much we have to pay them.
Next question. If elected to Congress, you will have one vote out of 435. How do you plan to work with your own party as well as the opposing party to create and pass meaningful legislation? Mr. Kent?
Yeah, so I've already started building coalitions with like-minded members of Congress, but I'm pretty upfront about my views, and I'm willing to work with people across the aisle. I think a place where we can get a good deal of bipartisan cooperation right now is on infrastructure. The devil's in the details and how we do that, but right now the I-5 bridge, it needs to be upgraded, it needs to be replaced. I think we need to work on a third bridge solution and a ring road solution. And this is a clear purview of the federal government. The problem is it gets jammed into these massive omnibus bills that are called infrastructure, but basically include the Green New Deal. We need a standalone I-5 infrastructure bill, and I would be happy to work with Republicans and Democrats up and down the I-5 corridor to get that specific legislation done. And what that legislation is going to do is it's going to use federal funding, and it's going to make it so Portland can't shove light rail into Vancouver. 100% would block that. Same thing with preventing Oregon from slapping excessive tolls because it's federal funding. We can prevent the state from doing that. So what I think is critical with the third bridge is we have to know if our elected officials are going to allow Portland to shove light rail into Vancouver. I think that's a question that'd be great for Marie to ask. But look, to answer, but I'm willing to work with anybody from across the aisle as long as it benefits the American people and it's within the parameters of the Constitution. The Constitution makes it very perfectly clear what we need to be doing. There used to be some bipartisan consensus with the populist left that we didn't need to be in endless foreign interventions, that we needed to bring back our manufacturing lines, that we needed to have a tight labor market. So Bernie Sanders used to talk about this stuff all the time. The problem is the populist left was consumed by Wall Street Democrats who now control their entire party. So I would love to rekindle the populist left so we could have some consensus on not getting involved in endless foreign wars, securing our borders, and bringing back our manufacturing. I think there's actually potential there. Same thing with breaking up big tech. There's some exciting things happening right now between Ken Buck, Ted Cruz, and even Amy Klobuchar. There's some good bipartisan cooperation going on there right now that I would be happy to be a part of.
Ms. Kent? Sorry, Ms. Perez, I apologize.
Wow. You know, it is shocking to hear the word bipartisan come out of Joe Kent. because that is the last thing he's offering. This is a man who is there to throw a wrench into things and get likes on Twitter. This is not someone who's there to deliver for our district. He just told us he's not going to bring home federal funding. I mean, this is a bridge too far. And the reality is we have got to get people who work down the middle. That is where the work actually happens. These extremists do not pass bills. The data is very clear. It takes a coalition to get things done. And that is not something that we've seen one shred of. Joe Kent is talking about purging the Republican Party. Okay? Taking out people who don't think exactly like him. I am not your typical Democrat. I am here to tell you. You know, I work in the trades. I live on a gravel road. My family's worked in logging. You know, and that's a perspective that's missing from Congress. And it's a perspective that, you know, we have got to get people in Congress who fix things again. Not people that are out starting flame wars.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Look, the current Democrat Party is in complete and total lockstep with the Republicans of yesteryear. There is very little daylight between the policies of Barack Obama, Joe Biden, George Bush, Mitt Romney. These people want our jobs overseas. They work for corporate Wall Street. Jobs shipped overseas, border wide open to undercut U.S. labor, and always looking for a new foreign intervention. Look at who voted in lockstep to continue to exacerbate the war in Ukraine. That was all Democrats. The only people who dissented from that were America First Republicans. So look, I am eager to work with the populists that actually care about our country within the Democrat Party who are doing the same thing that we're doing and trying to put the American people first. But look, the corporate Democrats, which is basically all of them in lockstep, you got Bernie Sanders and the squad all voting with Lockheed Martin and Raytheon to make the defense contractors rich, to send more money over to Ukraine. The only dissent from the current regime's narrative of corporatocracy is coming from the dissident right.
To Ms. Perez.
We have got to get back to a place where we have respect for each other and we are delivering for our district. There's so much grandstanding going on, and it's wrong. It's not what you get paid to go to Congress to do. You know, I know what it's like to work. I know what it's like to deliver. And that is something we've got to start seeing from our representatives again.
We'll move on to our third topic of foreign policy. The first question, considering specifically the events in Ukraine and Russia, what is your philosophy on the United States treating our allies and commitments to international countries versus broader international interests? Ms. Perez.
Russia invaded a democratic nation. Full stop. So if Canada invaded us, what part of northern Washington would you all be willing to give up to your aggressor? How long would you expect European nations to stand with us in that fight? Brave Ukrainians are dying and defending their God-given right to a democracy. And we have got to ensure they have the tools necessary to end the war on their own terms. Now, if Ukraine falls, Europe is in danger. And if Europe is in danger, we are in danger. Joe Kent's plan is just to surrender. He has called Putin reasonable and called Zelensky a thug. Putin has threatened nuclear arms 3 times at least. Since when nepotism to score political points? I know who our friends are, and I know who our enemies are. And Joe Kent has confused those two things.
She's she's so passionate about potentially sending our sons and daughters off to go die on a foreign land and to send billions of dollars that we don't have, that she reads off note cards. So look, I know war. I spent the vast majority of my adult life at war. We will always be able to find some country to defend. Democracy will always be at risk somewhere. The problem right now is that we have major geostrategic issues that are happening right now. Russia shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. That just shouldn't have happened. Russia's 100% in the wrong. What we need to be doing right now is not piling on billions and billions of dollars of arms to the Ukrainians and telling the Russians that we're at war with them, that the goal is regime change. Biden himself said that Vladimir Putin cannot stay in power. Now, the last people that we talked about like that was Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and Saddam Hussein. So what do we expect Putin to do? This only goes down a dark and dangerous road. So we need to be moving towards de-escalation. We killed off our ability to have any leverage in this when we killed off our energy sector. This didn't happen under President Trump because we are energy independent. We are a net exporter of energy. We are able to cut off the NORAD Stream 2 pipeline that pumps oil from Russia into all of Europe. And we had a lot of leverage that way. We killed off our ability to produce natural gas to provide an alternative to the Europeans. And now suddenly Putin has enough money in his coffers for foreign adventures. We need to turn back on our leverage, give the Europeans a fuel alternative, and tell Putin he's got a choice. He can either be the Russian leader who gives up his country to the Chinese Communist Party, because that's who's now bankrolling it, or he can start to work his way back into being an independent, autonomous country. Our goal has to be de-escalation. The longer we continue to send billions of dollars of aid, the more of that is going to go to get innocent Ukrainians who are fighting for their country. I respect what they're doing. It's going to just simply get them killed. And the only people that benefit from this are defense contractors in America and oligarchs in Ukraine. And the consequences could be catastrophic. If Putin's back's against the wall, he will go nuclear.
Mr. Kent. Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
So he just said that if Putin's back is against the wall, he will go nuclear. You cannot have it both ways. He cannot be both a reasonable guy and threatening nuclear Armageddon. If the Ukrainians lose, they will die. And there are mass graves all over Ukraine to prove that fact. No one is talking about sending soldiers there. This is very different. We are supporting them and fighting for their God-given right to democracy.
Rebuttals, Mr. Kent.
Yeah, we have a Division Plus sitting in Poland right there on the border. I've been in multiple situations like that. We are a razor's edge away from going to war with Russia over the eastern Russian-speaking border of Ukraine, while our border is open and insecure. I would not give one more penny to fund anything in Ukraine until we give an equal amount to secure our border. That's where our vital national security interest actually is. And look, if we continue this escalation, Putin will have no other choice but to go nuclear. We fought the entire Cold War diplomatically and economically, and we crushed the USSR with our independent, strong economy. We fought on the peripheries. Anytime things got close to the border, whether it was the Cuban Missile Crisis of our border or whether it was the border in Eastern Europe, we backed off, we moved towards diplomacy. But right now, we have Sleepy Joe, the same guy who ran Afghanistan, the botched Afghanistan withdrawal, at the helm, continuing to ask us for billions of dollars we don't have, while he brags that Putin cannot stay in power. Haven't we learned enough from our regime change debacles?
Next question. How do you see our domestic policy regarding specifically trade and energy interacting with our foreign policy and larger geopolitical strategies? Mr. Kent?
Yeah, for security, we have to have strong, independent energy that we can give to all of our people. That's good for our economy, that secures our nation. But we also need to turn back on U.S. energy, especially natural gas, to flood the market with cheap U.S. commodities. When we do that, we take very potent tools out of the hands of the world's worst actors, Vladimir Putin being one of them. Our sanctions package didn't work because you have multiple other countries that are circumventing those sanctions. The Europeans can barely get off of Russian oil. They're still buying it. We have to provide an alternative, and we can make ourselves very wealthy and very independent in the same time that we do that. But we also need to be independent so that we don't have to go, like Joe Biden just did, on his knees knees to Saudi Arabia to beg the Wahhabi terrorist kingdom if we can please get some more oil and gas. That is a disgrace. Energy independence and us being a net exporter of energy is absolutely essential. This is what the green energy, the Green New Deal is all about. It's about taking away our power and taking away our sovereignty and putting in the hands of people who produce those things, like the Chinese Communist Party, like the globalists in Davos. Look at what's happening in Europe right now. Look at how many governments are imploding under the weight of these green policies. Energy independence, energy security, the ability to flood the market with cheap U.S. oil makes the world a safer place.
Ms. Perez.
We have to have a strong national manufacturing ability again. And the trade agreements of the last couple of decades have not helped us do that in Southwest Washington. We've seen a lot of broken promises. A lot of these trade deals were a bipartisan attack on American manufacturing. And does anybody remember how we were told that letting China into the World Trade Organization would increase global security and democratize China? Globalization did not live up to the hype. And I know because, like I mentioned, my husband and I had to buy out a machine shop to ensure we had good parts for our customers. Now, I can make a car run for 500,000 miles if I've got good parts, but the reality is the quality of parts has been suffering year over year, and some of the stuff isn't even worth fixing. It's disposable parts, and that hurts the middle class first. That's who feels it first. That's who I see coming into my shop trying to figure out how they're going to pay the bill. I am not naive enough to think that we are going to make everything we use in America again. But without reshoring manufacturing, we are going to continue to cede critical geopolitical power to trading allies who are not our friends.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Yeah, the desire to let China into the World Trade Organization, the person that made the argument that that would be a good thing for their economy, our economy, and further democratize them, that was Senator Joseph Biden on the Foreign Affairs floor. So this is a Democrat policy. A lot of Republicans involved with that as well, but I beat those guys. So this has been a policy of the Uniparty. The Democrats haven't had any such revolution internally. We do need to bring back manufacturing, but again, this goes back to us bringing back manufacturing, using the tools of tariffs if we have to. We can't get into any massive trade organizations. These massive entangling organizations always have us bearing the vast majority of the cost and none of the benefit. We need unilateral trade agreements with other countries if we're going to have them at all. We need to use tariffs to make sure we bring back our manufacturing and our economy. We need to deregulate our economy. We need a policy strictly of make it in America, hire Americans, tighten up the labor market. Again, they'll have these MAGA talking points all day long because it's popular right now, but they will never advocate tightening up the labor market.
Look, the world is a deeply unsettled place right now. And we have a choice as to whether we want the world to be led by democracies like ours or authoritarian regimes. And China wants to prove that democracy cannot work. And Joe Kent is helping them do that every day. There is nothing China likes more than Joe Kent's divisiveness tearing us apart, than Joe Kent telling us Lauren Culp is the real governor. Kent thinks he's being tough on China, but he is playing right into their hands and undermining our elections, defunding our law enforcement, and isolating us from our allies is not going to put us in a position of strength. I will stand up to China, I will fight for American manufacturing, and I will protect our democracy. Joe Kent will not do that.
Next question. What do you see as the role of the United States in the world? Ms. Perez.
We've been hit a lot lately on immigration. And so I'd like to talk about that for a little bit. I believe in secure borders and that countries have a right and a responsibility to know who is coming into their countries, there is a crisis at the southern border that Joe Kent keeps bringing up. We have got to have strong borders, absolutely. But we also have to have a legal system of immigration. Joe Kent wants to ban all immigration for 20 years to reestablish a white majority. He is a perfect example of someone who is entirely incapable of making things better. What he wants is a political football that he can toss back and forth and fundraise off of. You know, what we need is a strong system of laws and controls. Joe Kent's policy is just magical thinking, morally bankrupt, and economic sabotage. It is exactly why so many people who work in agriculture are supporting me. Because they know that their existing prior ability for authorized labor is critical, not only to our agricultural industry, but to our ability to go to the grocery store and get produce. You know, Joe Kent would devastate the agricultural industry and get us $40 cranberry sauce on the Thanksgiving table without solving any of the problems we're really seeing. And, you know, immigration policy actually hits pretty close to home for me. My dad immigrated here from Mexico, fleeing leftist violence. He came here to finish his university degree and went on to become a lay pastor at an evangelical church. And
That is time. Mr. Kent?
So first off, this nonsense about me being a white nationalist is absolutely despicable. I fought for this country for over 20 years. I've placed my life in the hands of minorities and people of every single race and creed and sexuality, and they've placed their lives in my hand for 20 years. So that's absolutely just despicable. Look, I want to limit immigration into this country, cut off illegal immigration, and if a job has a visa tied to it that takes away a job from an American citizen, I want to get rid of that. The question was, what is America's role in the world? The American role in the world, from the American government's perspective, is to look out for our people. Period. End of story. We need to stop putting foreign countries first, stop putting major global corporations first, and put our people first once and for all. We need to make the American working family our center unit of concentration. We do that by bringing back our supply chain, creating an economic environment where someone can leave high school, get a decent paying job, they can support a family on one income. This is the environment, this is the culture that the greatest generation provided for us at the end of World War II, but it was sold off at the altar of globalism. We need to stop worrying about securing the rest of the world, whether that's securing international shipping lines or going off and fighting in these foreign conflicts because someone screamed democracy in some far-flung corner of the world. The U.S. government exists to look out for American citizens. If you're an American citizen, I don't care what political party you are, I don't care what race you are, I don't care what sex you are, I don't care what God you pray to, I don't care who you go to bed with at night. I am fighting for you. That is the role of our government.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
Joe Kent has consistently said he wants to end all immigration for 20 years. That is economic sabotage. It is magical thinking. It is not going to solve our problems. We need leadership who is going to pursue real support for returning prestige to career and technical programs. We need leadership who respects work, who works across the aisle to deliver. And saying hateful stuff is not going to get us there.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
It's not hateful to want to put your country first. I don't despise anybody. I don't despise any other country. I love my country and want to put my nation first. We need to stop importing workers that take away jobs from American citizens. Yeah, we have a lot of cultural work to do. We have to reinstitute a culture of hard work. We need to reemphasize the trades. We need our people understanding that there's honor in all work. That's 100% essential. But we have to stop importing people that take away jobs from American citizens. If you want to marry a foreigner, that's fine. Bring them over here. Make a great, big, beautiful American family. I wish you all the best. But visas that are specifically designed to undercut U.S. labor do not work on behalf of the American people. And if we're not working on behalf of the American people, who are we working for? Are we a sovereign nation that cares about our people? Or are we just an open-air bazaar, some sort of economy where we follow the dollar every which way? We have to put our people first.
Next question. Foreign policy is a notoriously complex issue, as are many other political issues. Given the inability of one person to be an expert on every topic, how important do you think it is to be knowledgeable and educated on every piece of legislation you vote on versus surrounding yourself with staff or expert advice that is knowledgeable on that topic? Mr. Kemp?
Well, personnel is policy. I know foreign policy pretty well from my background working at the senior levels of special operations in the intelligence community, but there's other areas of legislation that I don't have as much experience on. So yes, I will definitely look to have a cadre of experts that I can call upon, but at the end of the day, we're not ever governed by this expert or that expert. We are governed by people who are elected by the American people, by the people of the district, and it's on them to conduct the art of leadership, synthesizing all of those different tasks and being able to figure out how it's going to play out at the local level. This is exactly what I did when I was in the military. I enlisted in the Army as an infantryman, worked my way up to become a E7, and then I became a warrant officer. My job was really to bridge the gap between labor and management. Did that for my entire career, providing ground truth while I was in the CIA back to policymakers in Washington, D.C. So I feel very well equipped to do that. We have to have the right folks around us who are ideologically aligned with us, but have a good deal of expertise in places we have weak spots. I'm already looking for a staff of folks here in the district.
Ms. Pérez?
Running a small business often does not get the sort of respect it deserves. People think if you're really successful, you would have, thousands of people working for you. But when you are running a small team, I'm the one who has to figure out how to operate under the IRS, OSHA, the EPA, all of this federal soup of agencies. And so what I can bring to this role is somebody that understands the difficulty of the regulatory environment, who can understand how tough it is to make payroll, how obscene it is that small businesses like mine pay more in taxes than Jeff Bezos. The game that people are playing with their Ivy League accountants to get out of paying and supporting their local schools and roads. I actually sit on a couple of boards for local community college automotive program. And I am the only independent auto shop owner on that board. Everybody else is dealerships. And I get it, right? Dealerships are the ones who often have, the extra bandwidth to go in and bring in people. But the reality is their interests are very different than the independent auto shop interests. They're always pushing for things like alignment machines. An alignment machine is an $80,000 piece of equipment. And frankly, you could get a really qualified 8th grader to run it. What I'm always pushing for is supporting the critical thinking skills that mean that those kids can go out and be free agents on the market, work for any shop they want to, and command a high wage. So what I'm saying is that I really understand that who is sitting at the table matters, that you need diversity at your table. I get it. I don't know everything. That's one thing that running a business really means. And
That is time. Rebuttal to Mr. Kemp.
Not much of a rebuttal what you said. Yeah, so I want to bring people from the district to Washington, D.C. with me that are deeply connected to these issues. I've already said up front that I'm going to waive all the requirements for any kind of a college degree because I want people who've had skin in the game, who've either served in our military or have worked in the timber industry, the fishing industry, and they understand these issues at a very, very local and personal level. Getting ground truth was something I did throughout my entire military career and in the CIA, and consistently we weren't listened to by policymakers, and so that's a big reason why I'm in this fight, and so I want to bring that ground truth from here in the district to Washington, D.C. with me.
Rebuttal to Ms. Pérez.
I think one of the things that I've heard the most, one of the questions people have asked me the most is, will you commit to in-person town halls? Will you listen to us? Will you show up when you know that we're going to disagree with you? And that's what I promise. That I will always listen to folks. That I will always take seriously your concerns and your perspectives. Because I know I don't know everything. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to consider this leadership role. And listen, government is not going to get better if we keep electing extremists and lawyers and doctors. We need people who actually work in their communities and serve their communities if we want to see things get better. Joe Kent keeps telling you that you shouldn't vote for me because I think too independently, because I think differently than other Democrats. I'm telling you that's why you should vote for me, because that's how we get change.
Final topic of the evening, crime and security. Crime has risen dramatically over the last 3 years and is very important to the voters of this district. What do you see as the federal government's role in addressing this increasing crime? Ms. Pérez.
Yeah, Joe Kent wants to defund the FBI. He wants to excuse away violent people at the Capitol who attacked the Capitol and attacked the police who were defending the Capitol. He doesn't think they should be prosecuted. He calls them political prisoners. This is not a law and order guy. He has repeatedly called for defunding the FBI. The leading organization who fights domestic terrorism, child predators, organized crime, I think those are all pretty important. And Joe Kent says he's at war with them. And that is a truly dangerous position. Every American deserves to live in safety and security, and federal law enforcement are critical to maintaining that standard. Joe Kent is the only one here who is trying to defund the police. Crime is rampant and growing. You know how many catalytic converters I've replaced this year? And that is not the bleeding headline that's going to make it onto the nightly news, but it sure as hell has eviscerated the emergency funds of thousands of people in this district. My shop windows have been broken 4 times this year. So, I happen to really like it when the police come, when I call them. And that's why I support fully funding the police. There are almost 39 vacancies in the Clark County Sheriff's Department right now. And no one should be surprised by that, because the starting wage for police in America right now is $35,000. How many people do you know who are going to risk their lives for $35,000? I support fully funding.
That is time. Mr. Kent.
So the uptick in crime we've seen in the last 3 years is a direct result of Democrat policies. Our border is wide open. Enough fentanyl has been shipped into our country to kill every American 3 times over. It's flooding into this district. The DEA just released a bulletin that there's fentanyl shaped as lollipops and Skittles. They caught that in Multnomah County. It's moving up the I-5 corridor into the district, targeting people here in the district. And here locally, Democrats in Vancouver that are backing Marie and Jay Inslee, they are supporting the defunding of the police, making it so police officers can't proactively go out and protect their communities. They're also supporting the abolition of the 3 strikes and you're outlaw. And now we have child killers that are going to be released from prison to walk the streets of Vancouver. This has to end. The federal government is going to have to step in and start actually enforcing law and order. That starts at the border. We have to secure our country, get the military down there if we have to, get hard on the cartels if we absolutely have to. Here locally, we need to free up a lot of that money. The FBI right now is completely off the rails. They're targeting parents that show up at school board meetings. We just caught the FBI reallocating funds and personnel from the Child Sex Trafficking Task Force to go after the political opponents of Joe Biden. We've caught them over and over. How many times in the FBI's history have we caught them being used as a secret police? It's essentially the history of the FBI. They need congressional oversight. They need to be brought to heel. We can't let unelected bureaucrats behave in this way. We take those law enforcement funds and then we give them to constitutional sheriffs. The sheriffs are elected by the people. If the sheriffs don't do their job, you get to vote them out. Am I still good? Oh, okay. This problem with crime, when Democrats talk about crime, it's Democrats like Marie who we've caught. According to her own social media, her auto body shop is being used as an arsenal for Antifa. They're providing direct material support. They're providing direct material support for the very same Portland police officers who were being assaulted by Antifa. And this isn't according to like the Gateway Pundit. This is according to her own social media. So we can't trust Democrats when it comes to crime.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
So, I had an employee post on Instagram about fixing leaf blowers. And Joe Kent has turned that into my auto shop, not a body shop. We fix things, make them pretty. Into an arsenal for Antifa. You know, my father fled leftist violence in Mexico to come to this country. So I am pretty annoyed to hear that I support socialism and Antifa. I am a free market capitalist who believes in enterprise. You know, there is only one person on this stage who wants to defund the police, and it's Joe Kent. If you want to run against Antifa, you could move back to Portland and find someone there to do it, but you're not going to find it here.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Yeah, material support is material support. When you opened up your auto body shop, your machinist shop to fix leaf blowers that are being used to assault Portland police officers, that is material support. And that employee was her husband sitting right there. Wow, thanks for coming. So look, Democrats have consistently supported Antifa. Kamala Harris was raising funds for them as they burned down Portland and marched into our district, killing people and assaulting our businesses. So we need to reestablish law and order. We need federal law enforcement to actually go after Antifa and these violent organizations that are crossing state lines. That's in their purview. Taking care of illegal immigrants, that's in their purview. They're being weaponized right now as a political force by the Democrats, and we simply cannot tolerate that. This is where Congress steps in and actually conducts real oversight. That has to be done.
Next question. Just a reminder to the crowd that the people around you cannot hear if you are being loud. So please be respectful of those around you. Next question is, with drug overdoses becoming a leading cause of death in the United States, what policies do you support to address the drug trafficking issues in the United States? Mr. Kent.
Seal off our southern border. The fentanyl that's coming across the southern border, it's coming from Mexican cartels. The precursors are coming from the Chinese Communist Party. So we have to get hard on China, kick them out of our capital markets, get them out of Wall Street, seize all the land they own here in America, and then we send the military down to the border. We can partner with the Mexican government to start going after the cartels. Look, after 9/11, me and my friends, we had to go chase every single radical Islamic terrorist to the far-strong corners of the earth, even ones that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. However, it has never been done before that we go after people that are killing Americans on a daily basis, the Mexican drug cartels. So like I said, I wouldn't give one more penny to any kind of foreign aid until we secure our border and actually crack down on the fentanyl traffic. We also need to stop supporting Democrats like the ones here in Vancouver who support Marie, who are decriminalizing drugs. We have to make drug possession criminal again. We have to go after drug dealers and throw the book at them, lock them up and take away the key. And if they're pushing fentanyl that's killing people, they should be eligible for the death penalty. We have to fully fund and fully support our police, restore law and order. All these different acts that the legislature in Olympia passed this last October absolutely decimated law and order. And that was Democrat policies, whether it's from the southern border at the federal level or whether it's the letting child killers out. The Democrat Party, lock, stock, and barrel, owns the lawlessness on our streets.
Ms. Perez.
You know, people have a right to walk down the street without having to dodge needles. We have got to get our parks back. We have got to get our streets back. And that's going to take some nuanced policy and a lot of hard work. It is a supply issue. It's a demand issue. We do need to secure our borders. That is true. We also need to ensure that people who are trying to seek treatment can find it. You know, 100,000 lives were lost last year to drug abuse. And I guarantee there are people in this crowd who are personally touched by it, who have family members, who have maybe themselves experienced it, and people deserve support. You know, we have got to reinvest in the paths that make people successful, that affirm their natural abilities. We've got to be supporting, you know, the career and technical programs. And I know I sound like a broken record here, but it really does come back to supporting kids at what they're good at, and ensuring that they can find jobs and paths and careers that suit them, that provide for their communities, that give them a sense of hope and upward mobility. Because that's where a lot of this is coming from. Is people are losing a sense of hope.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Yeah, one of the most catastrophic effects of globalization, shipping our manufacturing base overseas, killing off our timber industry, is that we took away the ability for somebody to get a decent paying job they could support a family on. This took away the honor and dignity of multiple generations. right here in America. But look, all the compassion in the world, that's not going to take away these predators off our streets from pushing these lethal drugs into the hands of our children. They're marketing as Skittles and lollipops, for God's sake. So we have to go after these people aggressively. We have to recriminalize possessing hard drugs. We have to throw the book at, and potentially even the death penalty, at people who are dealing drugs that kill people.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
We've got to address these issues because they are tearing apart our communities. We cannot afford to say that you're on your own with this one. We cannot afford to just keep blaming people. We've got to address the real impacts of it. And you know, it's communities like ours. I mean, nobody wants their kid dodging needles on the way to the school bus. That is an ugly reality way too many people are facing. And I see you. You know how many times I've washed human poop off the driveway at our shop? No, it's not a good thing. It's not working out really well for us right now. So we do need leadership change. We do need commitment to solving these problems.
Next question. What is your stance generically on gun policy or specific policies that you might support? Ms. Perez.
So I'm a gun owner. I live in rural Skamania County, so every house I drive past and can see, they're all gun owners too. You know, and a lot of people support what's known as an assault weapons ban. That's not my position. I'm a pragmatist. And I think that the first reasonable thing is to increase the age of purchase to 21. Because kids are just not as old as they used to be. You know, and gun shop owners used to know who they were selling guns to. But we've gotten such big communities now that, you know, we've got to come in with more help to ensure that the people who shouldn't have guns aren't getting them.
Mr. Kent.
The Second Amendment is very clear. We have the right to keep and bear arms. Gun laws are infringements. Now, if we're going to raise the age from 18 to 21, then I think we also need to raise the age of the draft. Right now, we can send young men and young women that are 17, 18 years old to go die in foreign wars that the ruling class benefits from. So I'm against any kind of gun laws. The Second Amendment is very, very clear. The reason why we have a Second Amendment is because, look, hey, there's Republicans and Democrats here in this room tonight, right? If I win, Democrats, do you want me to have complete and total control and monopoly on violence? You don't trust me, right? She thinks I'm an extremist. You need to have that check on any kind of crazy authoritarian, which is what you guys think we are, any kind of authoritarian tendencies that we have. We have to have the ability to have our government have a healthy fear of us, or we're going to end up like the Canadians or like the Australians. This country is very unique. We have the right to defend ourselves against tyranny. We can never lose that. We can never let them deviate from the Second Amendment as written. Gun laws are infringements.
Rebuttal to Ms. Perez.
Yeah, Joe Kent wants to paint me as your traditional rubber stamp Democrat. That is not who I am. That is not the life I've led. I didn't start an auto shop so I could have a good platform for running for Congress. I started an auto shop with my husband because I believe in fixing things. And, you know, I'm going to send my kid to public school. I think about that, you know. I know that statistically my chances of getting shot went way up when I decided to run for office. You know, but we have got to start supporting normal people in running for office, people with nuance, people who will listen to us. And that's what I'm here to offer.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Pretty sure this is the second or third thing that you've ran for. So this is the first time I've ever ran for absolutely anything. I fought for this country for over 20 years. I believe in public service. That's why I'm in this. I've experience in the private sector as well. So what we need to do is ensure that individual liberties as written in the Constitution are always protected. That's one of the most basic rules of government, is defending our God-given rights. Our rights don't come from government, they come from God. And the Second Amendment is the strongest thing that we have to protect all of that. And look, if you want to call that extreme, that's fine. You can call me extreme. I don't think that's extreme at all. Following the Constitution and putting Americans first is not extreme. And I'm ready and willing and able to have a conversation with anybody. I've done over 260 in-person town halls, and I answer everybody's questions. They can even come record me. I don't care. So I submit to you, Will you answer everyone's question at the town halls? Will you let them tape you? Will you actually be honest and open, or will you give, these cagey answers where you aren't actually forthcoming on what your policies will be? At town halls, you gotta be forthcoming.
Our final question of the evening. How do you faithfully represent a district in Congress that is itself split deeply on all of these issues? Mr. Kent?
Yeah, when I get elected, I'm going to represent even people who didn't vote for me, even people who really don't like me. And I know that that's my duty. Just like when I served the country, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I went in under Bill Clinton, didn't like Bill Clinton. Worked for George Bush, didn't really like George Bush. By the end of his tenure, I did 8 years under Obama, didn't like him at all either. However, when you take that oath, you are safeguarding our republic, and you need to be accountable to everyone in the district. So for me, I'm not going to ask you how you voted when you come into the office because you need something from constituent services. Our job is to be statesmen. It is to be actual civilian leadership who's going to represent us in Washington, D.C., and to be accountable to the people. And I believe whether you voted for me or not, I'm there to represent you, and I look forward to engaging with you.
Ms. Pérez?
I'm willing to bet that not many of you here tonight think that arresting Fauci for murder is a top priority for your legislator. And that ending all immigration is the solution you're going to pursue. I bet there aren't very many people here who think we should defund the FBI. So how are we going to have someone who represents us, who believes all of that, represent us? I just don't see that happening. Joe Kent's not listening to us. He's listening to some chat rooms. This is not about what the district believes. He is so far outside of even what his own party thinks on issues. This is a man who's talking about purging Republicans. And this is not a man who's looking for the middle path and how he can forge alliances and build bridges. Joe Kent wants to burn them down. We are not going to be getting our money's worth out of a candidate who talks like that.
Rebuttal to Mr. Kent.
Ask yourself this: can you afford 2 more years of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi destroying our economy? Can you afford to send your kids to school? Can you afford to grocery shop? Can you afford to fill up the gas tank? Christmas is around the corner. Can you afford presents? 1 month of wages is being stolen from you thanks to Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and their policies. How's your 401k doing right now? How's your future look for your kids? Very bleak. We cannot have 2 more years of the Democrats at the helm. I'm going there to be a check and a balance on Nancy Pelosi and on Joe Biden. The crime that is spewing into our district, ask yourself if you can continue to live this way. How many of you have thought about moving to a rural area or out of the state altogether because of crime? Probably a heck of a lot of you here. We cannot continue to let the Democrats at the federal level and at the state level continue this anarcho-tyranny of allowing chaos to run free on our streets or allowing child killers to exit prisons and walk amongst us once again. Ask yourself, can you afford 2 more years of this, or do you want to check on this?
Kent, that is time. Rebuttal to Ms. Pérez.
Joe Kent is running to throw sand in the gears. He is not running to make things better. He is running to make himself a celebrity. That's the reality. Only somebody who lives in Clark County would think that rural communities have been exempt from this wave of crime. We're not. And we need representation who understands that, who understands that it's bad for all of us, and who's going to work for all of us. And that's why I'm running. Because I believe in public service. We've got to get back to a place where we believe in public service and support each other.
Each candidate will have a 2-minute time period to issue a closing statement. We will start with Ms. Pérez.
There are profound differences, I think it's fair to say, between Joe Kent and I. We do not have enough people in Congress who believe in fixing things, who believe in working across the aisle. We have got enough extremists. And things will not get better if we keep electing radicals to Congress. They're not going to get better if we keep electing lawyers and doctors, for that matter, either. We need people who believe in the power of hard work, who believe in returning dignity to work, who believe in listening deeply to their constituents and representing them. So I am not your typical candidate for Congress. I am definitely not a typical Democrat. And I'm so grateful to have the support of so many independents and Republicans who are putting patriotism above partisanship, because that is the only way we're going to get out of this mess. Thank you all so much.
Mr. Kemp.
Again, ask yourself if you can afford 2 more years of Biden, Pelosi, and Inslee. Absolutely out of control right now. So Marie says that she's some sort of a different Democrat. Ask her at her next town hall, or maybe she'll answer tonight, who she'd vote for House Speaker. If it's a Democrat, she will be rubber stamping all of this so-called bipartisan, Build Back Better, Green New Deal issues that prioritize foreign governments and major global corporations over American citizens. She said nothing tonight about getting back to being energy independent, turning back on U.S. energy. That's absolutely essential. That's what's driving this cycle of inflation right now. The Democrats have no desire to fix this because they're getting everything they want. More power, more conversions to green energy. Crime is absolutely out of control. Everyone knows this. We've talked about it quite a bit tonight. The Democrats have done nothing to secure our southern border. So she can say all day long, like Kamala Harris, like Joe Biden, like Nancy Pelosi, we need a secure southern border. And then vote for omnibus spending because it gets a little bit of pork from the district and she wants to get some stuff done that sends billions of dollars to Ukraine, sends billions of dollars to major global corporations in China for green renewable energy. Meanwhile, our border continues to hemorrhage. And they can't do anything about our border. They can't do anything about the challenge that illegal and legal immigration is to U.S. wages because it goes against their corporate paymasters. Wall Street is 100% lock, stock, and barrel with the Democrat Party. Just like major defense contractors, they still got some old school Republicans they like here and there. But if you want to bring back American manufacturing, create the economic environment that lets someone leave high school, get a decent paying job in the industry, they can support a family on a single income, and that parents are in the driver's seat of their kids' education, their kids are protected from this horrible ideology that's being pushed by the Planned Parenthood agenda, then we have to start putting our country first. We can't have 2 more years of just another vote for Nancy Pelosi and for Joe Biden. I'm going there to provide a check and a balance on that agenda.
Please give our candidates a round of applause.